The forest smelled of pine and damp earth, sharp and clean in a way that made my chest ache. I pressed my palm against rough bark, steadying myself as voices drifted through the trees behind me. Laughter, music, ceremonial drums that had been beating since sunset. The mating ceremony. Everyone who mattered was there, dressed in their finest, hoping to catch the eye of someone powerful. Everyone except me. My hair, pale as winter wheat, caught the last rays of dying sunlight. I tucked a strand behind my ear with trembling fingers, dirt still caked beneath my nails. My dress, the only decent one I owned, was torn at the hem, smeared with mud. I'd spent hours preparing it, imagining how I might blend into the crowd. Invisible, but present. None of that mattered now. The elderly woman's hand was cold in mine, her breathing shallow and rattling. I'd found her 3 hours ago, wandering disoriented near the border territories. A fall, a twisted ankle, confusion setting in as shock took hold. She'd taken shelter in a small cave when the rain started, but part of the entrance had given way, trapping her leg beneath stone. "You should go, child," she whispered, her weathered face gray. "Your ceremony." "Shh." I wrapped my cloak tighter around her shoulders. The ceremony doesn't matter. But it did. Of course it did. I was 24, old by pack standards to still be unmated, unclaimed, unattached to anyone of significance. My parents had died when I was 15, leaving me with nothing but a small cottage on the outskirts and a reputation for being too quiet, too strange, too unsuited for the hierarchy that governed everything. The mating ceremony was supposed to be my chance. Not to find love. I wasn't naive enough to hope for that. But to find security. A place. Someone who might see me as useful enough to keep around. Instead, I was here in the darkening woods, with a woman whose name I didn't even know. "I sent word," I told her, though I wasn't sure she could hear anymore. "The healers know where we are." I'd run back to the village borders an hour ago, found a young patrol guard, begged him to fetch help. He'd looked at me like I was insane, covered in dirt, frantic, babbling about an injured elder while the most important social event of the year raged on. But something in my face must have convinced him, because he'd nodded and disappeared. That was an hour ago. Maybe more. Time felt strange out here, measured only by the woman's increasingly labored breaths and the dropping temperature. I hummed softly, an old melody I barely remembered, something my mother used to sing. The drums continued their distant rhythm, reminding me of everything I was missing. She couldn't even bother to show up. Probably for the best. Who would want her anyway? The thoughts weren't mine, but I could hear them clearly. Years of living on the periphery taught you to anticipate rejection. A branch snapped behind me. I went rigid, every instinct screaming, "Danger." The patrol should approach from the east. This sound came from the west, from deeper in the forest, from territories we'd been warned to avoid. "Who's there?" My voice came out stronger than I felt. Silence. Then footsteps, deliberate, unhurried. 3 figures emerged from shadows between trees. Men. Tall, powerfully built, moving with the controlled grace of trained warriors. They weren't from our pack. The one in the center stopped a dozen feet away, his eyes scanning the scene with calculated assessment. Dark hair, sharp features, an air of command so tangible it made the air feel heavier. His gaze moved from the collapsed cave to the injured woman, to me, kneeling in the dirt with my ruined dress and tangled hair. "You're on Silvermoon territory," I said, forcing my voice steady. "The border is 1/2 mile west." "We're aware." His voice was deep, controlled, utterly unbothered. "We heard someone calling for help." My mind raced. I hadn't called out, had I? "The healers are coming," I said, shifting to place myself more fully between the strangers and the woman. "We don't need assistance from wolves who actually know what they're doing." The man to the right spoke, younger, with bronze skin and amusement in his tone. "No offense, but you look like you've been losing a fight with that cave for hours." He wasn't wrong. The leader studied me with unsettling intensity. How long has she been unconscious? 20 minutes, maybe less. I swallowed hard. Who are you? Does it matter? He moved forward with fluid grace. She needs proper shelter and treatment soon, or hypothermia will set in. Everything in me said not to trust them. Unknown wolves on our territory, appearing too conveniently. But the old woman's breathing was getting worse, the forest growing colder, and the healers still hadn't arrived. The leader crouched beside me, close enough that I could see amber flecks in his dark eyes. I'm going to examine her injuries. You can either help or get out of the way. There was no threat in his voice, only absolute certainty that he would do this regardless of my opinion. And beneath my fear, I recognized something familiar in his tone, the sound of someone who'd made too many decisions in the dark with no good options. I nodded once. Her leg is injured, possibly broken. She hit her head when she fell. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. A healer's touch, or at least a warrior trained in field medicine. The younger wolf produced a flask, and between the three of them they fashioned a makeshift stretcher with speed that spoke of extensive experience. Where do you need her taken? The leader asked. The healer's lodge on the eastern... I stopped, realization hitting. You can't. You're not pack. The guards won't let you pass without... We'll take her to your border, he interrupted smoothly. Your healers can meet us there. He stood, and I found myself rising with him, drawn up by the sheer force of his presence. Up close, I could see faint scars along his jawline, the weight of authority that sat on his shoulders like a visible mantle. Thank you, I said quietly, for helping her. Don't thank me yet. He turned to his companions, issuing quick commands. Then back to me. What's your name? Does it matter? I echoed his earlier words. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. I suppose not. They lifted the woman with careful precision, and I followed as they began moving through the forest toward our border. We reached the border just as torches appeared through the trees. The healers, accompanied by guards whose expressions shifted from concern to suspicion the moment they spotted the strangers. What's going on here? The head guard, Thomas, a grizzled veteran, stepped forward, hand on his weapon. Who are these wolves? They helped me, I said quickly. The woman needed... We're leaving. The leader's voice cut through rising tension. He and his companions lowered the stretcher carefully. Your territory. Your responsibility now. Thomas's eyes narrowed. You're Silver Moon. You know the protocols about crossing borders without... We do. The leader met Thomas's challenge with unwavering composure. And we've just returned to our side. No harm done. He was right. Technically, we'd crossed back into Silver Moon territory during our walk. Clever. Strategic. The leader's gaze found mine one last time, and something passed between us. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or understanding. Then he nodded once and disappeared into the forest with his companions. Are you insane? Thomas rounded on me the moment they were gone. Do you have any idea who that was? My stomach dropped. Who? But Thomas was already shaking his head. Get back to the village now. And pray your absence tonight doesn't cause the diplomatic incident it probably will. I stood there in torchlight, watching the healers work. The drums had finally stopped. The ceremony must be over. And I had missed it entirely, saving a stranger with the help of wolves whose names I didn't know. The old woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked directly at me, lucid for the first time in hours, and smiled. You have a kind heart, child, she whispered. That will matter more than you know. Then the healers took her away, and I was left alone at the border, between the life I'd known and something else entirely. Something that began with a choice in the darkness, and a stranger's amber eyes that saw me when no one else bothered to look. The summons. I didn't sleep that night. By the time full morning arrived, my eyes burned with exhaustion. I'd scrubbed the dirt from beneath my nails, braided my pale hair, changed into simple gray linen that wouldn't draw attention. The village was already awake, unusual activity for the morning after a ceremony. I made my way toward the healer's lodge first. Maya, a she-wolf my age smirked as I passed, heard you had quite the adventure last night. Shame you missed everything. Brandon mated with Cecilia. Beautiful ceremony. The words were designed to wound. They succeeded. I'm glad for them, I said quietly, moving past. Inside the lodge, Iris, the head healer, looked up from grinding herbs. The woman from last night? I asked. Alive, thanks to you. Iris's sharp eyes assessed me. Broken leg, mild concussion, but she'll recover. Relief flooded through me. There's something else, Iris continued, her expression growing serious. The Alpha wants to see you. My blood turned to ice. What? Why? I imagine it has something to do with the 3 Silvermoon wolves who carried an injured pack member across our borders last night. She raised an eyebrow. Thomas reported the incident. Protocol demands investigation. Of course it did. The walk to the Alpha's residence felt like a journey to execution. Inside, Alpha Raymond sat behind a massive oak desk, his gray-shot hair and lined face testament to 40 years of leadership. Beside him stood his son, Garrett, who would inherit the position within the year. You're the one who found the elder last night, Raymond said. Margaret Stone. Yes, Alpha. I kept my gaze down. Look at me, girl. I obeyed, forcing myself to meet his eyes. Thomas says 3 Silvermoon wolves helped transport her. Says you interacted with them directly. He leaned forward. Describe them. I recounted everything, their appearances, their efficiency, their military precision. Raymond listened without interrupting, but I noticed Garrett's expression shifting from bored indifference to sharp attention. The leader, Garrett said quietly. Dark hair, amber eyes, scars on his jaw? Yes. Father and son exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. Do you know who that was? Raymond asked. No, Alpha. Should I? Another weighted silence. Then Garrett laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. She really doesn't know. Know what? Frustration crept into my voice. Raymond stood, moving to the window. That was Marcus Blackwood, Alpha King of Silvermoon, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. The room tilted. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. The stranger who'd knelt in the dirt beside me, who'd helped without hesitation. That was an Alpha King. That's impossible, I whispered. Silvermoon sent word this morning, Raymond continued. Marcus Blackwood is coming here. Today. Officially. My legs went weak. Here? Why? He says he's coming to ensure the injured woman receives proper care. Garrett's eyes narrowed. But Alpha Kings don't make personal visits for welfare checks. There's something else. What does this have to do with me? Everything. Raymond pulled out a formal letter sealed with silver wax. He specifically requested your presence at the meeting, by name. But he didn't know my name, I protested. Nevertheless. Raymond's expression hardened. You'll be present when he arrives. You'll answer his questions honestly, and you'll do nothing to create a diplomatic incident. Is that clear? Yes, Alpha. Dismissed. Be back here within the hour. I fled on trembling legs, mind racing. An Alpha King. I'd spoken to him like he was just another wolf. Had challenged him about crossing borders. Any one of those things could be considered disrespectful. The village square had transformed, people cleaning, organizing, preparing for an inspection. Did you hear? Maya appeared beside me. The Alpha King himself is coming. Someone said it's because of what happened last night. She smiled poisonously. Must be nice, finally getting attention, even if it's only because you caused a border incident. I walked away without responding. The hour passed in a blur. I changed into my only other decent dress, deep blue linen my mother had made years ago, and tried to calm my racing heart. When I returned to the Alpha's residence, The square was packed with onlookers. Raymond stood at the entrance with Garrett and several high-ranking pack members, all projecting strength and stability. I was directed to stand slightly behind and to the left, present but not prominent, visible but not important. Horns sounded from the eastern road. 3 horses crested the hill, moving at an easy canter. I recognized them immediately. The 3 wolves from the forest, now dressed in formal traveling clothes that marked them as nobility. And in the center, sitting astride a black stallion with easy grace, was Marcus Blackwood. He looked different in daylight, more dangerous. The scars stood out in sharp relief. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing the strong lines of his face. He wore black leather and silver, and carried himself with authority that made Raymond's power look diminished by comparison. This was an Alpha King, and I'd spent last night arguing with him in the dirt. The horses stopped. Marcus dismounted in one fluid motion. Raymond stepped forward with formal greeting on his lips. But Marcus's gaze swept past him, past Garrett, past all the carefully arranged pack members, and landed directly on me. For one endless moment, those amber eyes held mine with intensity that stole my breath. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not a polite, diplomatic smile. Something genuine, something warm. "Hello again," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly. "I believe we have unfinished business." And with those words, everything I thought I understood about my small, invisible existence shattered like glass. The proposal. The silence felt alive, pressing against my skin. Every eye in the square turned toward me. Raymond recovered first. "Alpha King Blackwood, welcome to our territory." Marcus finally tore his gaze from mine. "Alpha Raymond, thank you for receiving us. Please come inside. We've prepared in a moment." Marcus's interruption was polite, but absolute. He turned back to me. "First, I'd like to know if the elder survived the night." Young, woman, not girl, not pack member. The distinction felt deliberate. "She's recovering," I managed. "The healers say she'll be fine." "Good." Genuine satisfaction crossed his face. "You did well. The hypothermia would have taken her within another hour." Raymond cleared his throat. "Yes, we're grateful for your assistance, though I'm sure you understand our confusion about why an Alpha King would personally involve himself. Do you question why someone would help an injured elder?" Marcus's tone remained pleasant, but something sharp edged his words. I was under the impression that protecting the vulnerable was a universal value. The younger wolf coughed to cover what might have been a laugh. Garrett's expression darkened. "Of course not," Raymond said smoothly. "We simply meant—" "Perhaps we should continue this inside," Marcus suggested. Raymond sensed he was losing control. "I'm sure your men would appreciate rest." "Actually," the younger wolf spoke up, grin irrepressible, "I'd love to see more of your territory." Marcus shot him a look that could have frozen water. "Ethan." "What? You're going to talk politics for hours." "I'll have someone escort your companion," Raymond said, gesturing to a guard. "And Cole." He nodded toward the silent wolf. "Cole stays with me," Marcus said simply. The group began moving toward the residence. I turned to slip away when Marcus's voice stopped me cold. "I'd like her to join us." Everyone froze. Raymond turned slowly. "I'm sorry?" "The woman who found the elder. I'd like her present for our discussion." Marcus's tone suggested he was asking, but the authority behind it made clear this wasn't optional. "She was there. She can provide first-hand account." "That won't be necessary," Garrett interjected. "We have Thomas's report." "And I'd prefer to hear it from her." Marcus's eyes found mine. "If she's willing." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to maintain my invisibility. But something in his gaze held me, remembering how he'd looked at me in the forest. Not with pity or dismissal, but with recognition. "I'm willing," I heard myself say. Raymond's jaw tightened. Very well. Inside the meeting room, we gathered around a long table carved from a single massive trunk. Marcus took the seat at Raymond's right, Cole positioning himself behind. I was directed to a chair near the far end, close enough to participate, distant enough to remember my place. Garrett sat across from me, expression sour. Now, Raymond began once everyone was settled. Perhaps you can explain the true purpose of your visit, Alpha King Blackwood. Marcus leaned back, completely at ease. You're right. The Elder was fortunate timing, but not my primary concern. He paused. I came because of the mating ceremony. My stomach dropped. I don't understand, Raymond said carefully. Your ceremony was last night. A significant event. Marcus's gaze swept the table. Every unmated wolf of age expected to attend. That's correct. And yet, one chose not to. Marcus's eyes found mine. Chose instead to help a stranger in the forest, alone in the dark, knowing it would cost her any opportunity the ceremony might have offered. The words hung in the air. With respect, Garrett said, tone anything but. I fail to see why one pack member's poor judgment warrants an Alpha King's attention. Poor judgment, Marcus repeated slowly. Is that what you call compassion in your pack? Choosing to save a life over social advancement? I call it a violation of pack expectations, Garrett shot back. The ceremony exists for important reasons. Tell me, Marcus interrupted, voice calm but steely. How many wolves at your ceremony would have left to help an injured stranger? How many would have even noticed she was missing? The silence was damning, because we all knew the answer. None of them. This is all very philosophical, Raymond interjected, but I still don't understand your interest. Silvermoon is hosting the Continental Summit in 3 weeks, Marcus said. Every major pack from the Northern Territories will be represented. It's an opportunity to strengthen alliances, resolve disputes. He paused. I need someone at my side for the duration. Someone who understands that strength isn't just about dominance or political maneuvering. My heart began pounding. You have advisors, Raymond said slowly. Diplomats? Who do exactly what's expected. Say exactly what they're supposed to say. Marcus's gaze never wavered from mine. I don't want performance. I want someone real. Someone who makes choices based on what's right, not what's advantageous. You're suggesting Raymond couldn't finish. I'm asking if she would consider accompanying me to the summit as my guest, my partner for the proceedings. The room erupted. Garrett was on his feet immediately. Absolutely not. This is highly irregular. She has something more valuable than training. Marcus cut him off, looking at Garrett with intensity that made the younger wolf step back. She has integrity. This is insane, one elder muttered. The decision, Raymond said finally, should be hers. Everyone turned to look at me. I wanted to disappear. Why me? I asked quietly. You don't know me? I'm nobody. You're someone who chose compassion over ambition, Marcus said, leaning forward. Someone who acts instead of performing. Someone who sees people, not opportunities. He paused. And you're not nobody. Not to the woman you saved. Not to me. The words struck something deep in my chest. I don't know anything about summits or diplomacy. I'll teach you what you need to know. Cole and Ethan will help. A slight smile touched his lips. Fair warning. Ethan's lessons might be more entertaining than useful. Despite everything, I felt my own lips curve upward. How long would I be gone? 3 weeks total. 2 weeks of preparation at Silvermoon. 1 week at the summit itself. 3 weeks away from this village. From the pitying looks and whispered comments. 3 weeks in a world I'd never imagined accessing. It was terrifying. Impossible. And the most important decision I would ever make. I looked at Raymond, at Garrett's hostile expression, at the elders who'd never known my name. Then I looked at Marcus, at the patient certainty in his eyes. "Yes," I said, voice stronger now. "I'll go with you." And somewhere in my mind I heard the sound of doors opening, of possibilities unfurling, of a life I'd never dared imagine suddenly, impossibly, within reach. The journey we left the next morning at dawn. I stood at the eastern road with my single bag, wearing my mother's blue dress and her comb in my hair. Marcus arrived as the sun broke the horizon, riding the black stallion. Cole and Ethan flanked him, but this time they'd brought a fourth horse, a gray mare with gentle eyes. "She's yours," Marcus said, dismounting. "Her name is Silver. She'll carry you safely." I approached the mare slowly, letting her smell my hand before stroking her neck. "Ready?" Ethan's grin was bright as sunrise. "Fair warning, the ride to Silvermoon takes most of the day, and Cole refuses to sing traveling songs." "The day just got longer," Cole muttered. Their easy banter settled something anxious in my chest. The journey passed in stages, morning giving way to afternoon, familiar territories transitioning to lands I'd never seen. Ethan filled hours with stories that were probably half fiction, teaching me traveling songs that made even Cole crack a smile. Marcus rode beside me, mostly in silence, but it was comfortable quiet. As shadows lengthened, we crested a hill, and Silvermoon revealed itself in the valley below. It was magnificent. Stone buildings with slate roofs, streets laid out in elegant patterns, a central estate that could house 100 wolves. Everything spoke of power and prosperity. "Home," Marcus said quietly, and I heard something complex in his voice. Pride mixed with burden. We descended as twilight fell. I felt eyes tracking our progress as wolves emerged from buildings, expressions ranging from curious to calculating. The estate was imposing up close. But Marcus led us to a side courtyard where a woman waited, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, wearing authority like a comfortable cloak. "My mother," Marcus said, "Catherine Blackwood." She studied me with unsettling intensity. Then her expression softened. "So you're the one who chose compassion over ceremony. Welcome to Silvermoon, Nora. I think you'll find we value such choices here." The summit. The following 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Catherine took charge of my education, teaching me summit protocol while reminding me that rules existed to be understood, not necessarily followed. Ethan appeared at random intervals with increasingly absurd scenarios, testing my ability to think quickly. Cole taught me to recognize dangerous wolves by their body language. And Marcus was everywhere and nowhere. Present in stolen moments between his duties. Early morning walks where he'd share his concerns. Late evening strategy sessions. Quiet dinners where we talked about nothing important. I learned that he'd lost his father young, like me. That he'd inherited leadership before he felt ready. That he carried loneliness like a second skin. And he learned me, my fears and hopes, my tendency to overthink. "You're stronger than you think," he told me one evening in the garden. "I see it in how you handle my counsel's skepticism." "I shrink inside," I admitted. "I just don't let it show anymore." "That's called courage." His hand found mine in darkness, feeling fear and acting anyway. The contact had become natural over 2 weeks, casual touches that meant everything and nothing. His advisors noticed. His pack noticed. Catherine noticed and smiled. Then the summit arrived. We traveled with an entourage to neutral grounds, a massive estate that had hosted such events for generations. Packs arrived from every direction, banners flying, power displays carefully orchestrated. I recognized the dynamics Marcus had described, the posturing, the calculated friendliness masking ancient grudges. "Marcus," a tall woman approached, beautiful and sharp-edged. "How unexpected to see you've brought a companion." "Vivian?" Marcus's voice cooled. "Allow me to introduce Nora." Vivian's gaze raked over me with open disdain. "How charming. Though I'm surprised you chose someone so unpolished for such an important gathering. Before I could respond, Marcus stepped closer to me. I chose someone genuine. Steel beneath silk. Someone who understands that strength isn't performed. It's lived. Vivian retreated with forced grace. Similar interactions peppered the first days, wolves testing, probing. Each time, Marcus made his position clear. The shift happened during the third evening's formal gathering. Discussions had grown heated about territorial disputes. Voices rising, barely controlled aggression. I watched wolves who should have been allies snap at each other over boundaries drawn decades ago. This is pointless, one alpha declared. We'll never agree. What if, I said quietly, surprising even myself. The question isn't who benefits, but who suffers. The room went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Explain, the first alpha said, more challenge than invitation. I glanced at Marcus, found steady encouragement, and continued. You're arguing about boundaries and benefits, but you're not talking about the wolves who actually live in these disputed areas, the ones who can't mate across pack lines, who can't trade freely, whose families are divided by politics they didn't create. That's the nature of pack structure, Vivian said dismissively. Does it require unnecessary sacrifice? I met her gaze. Or does maintaining these conflicts serve the alphas more than the packs? The words could have gotten me killed. Several. Wolves bristled. But others, more than I expected, went very still, actually considering. She has a point, Catherine said from across the room. We've been having the same arguments for 30 years. Perhaps it's time we ask different questions. The debate that followed was heated but productive, shifting from territorial demands to actual problem-solving. Not everyone agreed, but enough engaged honestly that real progress emerged. Boundaries were redrawn, trade agreements formed. Families separated by politics gained pathways to reunification. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. And difference was a start. Afterward, Marcus found me on a terrace overlooking moonlit gardens. You did it, he said. You shifted the entire conversation. I probably shouldn't have spoken. You're exactly what I needed. He turned to face me fully. What we all needed. Someone willing to say what needed saying without calculating political cost. I was terrified. I know. His hand came up, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. You were terrified, and you spoke anyway. That's not just courage, Nora. That's leadership. The word hung between us, weighted with implications. Leadership. Me. I don't want to go back, I whispered. To my village, to being invisible. Then don't. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Stay. Not as a guest or diplomatic courtesy. Stay because you want to. Because this... He gestured between us. Whatever this is, it matters. You matter to me. As what? Your advisor? As mine. The word came out rough, almost desperate. However that looks. Whatever that means. I'm asking you to build it with me. The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. His lips were gentle at first, questioning. But I'd spent too long denying hope. I kissed him back with everything I'd held silent, fear and hope and fierce belief that maybe I could have this. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I heard applause from inside. Catherine stood at the terrace doors, grinning shamelessly. Ethan beside her, whistling approval. Cole's expression might have been a smile. About time, Ethan called. We've been taking bets for 2 weeks. The laughter that followed felt like belonging, like family, like home in a way my village never had. And when Marcus took my hand, interlacing our fingers with deliberate certainty, I knew I'd found something I hadn't been looking for. Not just love, though that was growing undeniably, but recognition. A place where choosing compassion over convenience made me valuable, not strange. Where speaking truth held more weight than performing pleasantries. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, standing in Silvermoon's great hall with Marcus beside me and the pack assembled, Catherine made it official. I was no longer a guest, but pack. Not through birth or mating bonds yet, those would come later, naturally, when we were both ready. But through choice, through value, through the simple fact that I'd proven myself willing to speak difficult truths and act with integrity. Margaret, the elder I'd saved, attended the ceremony, traveling from my old village to witness the transformation. She embraced me warmly, whispering that hearts always knew truth even when minds doubted. My old pack sent formal congratulations, Raymond's message carefully political, Garrett's notably absent. As seasons changed and I grew into my role beside Marcus, I understood that the mating ceremony I'd missed had never been my destiny. That night in the forest, choosing to help a stranger in darkness, had been the real ceremony. The moment I'd chosen the person I wanted to become over the person others expected. And Marcus had simply been wise enough to notice. Years later, when we had our own ceremonies to attend and our own pack to lead together, I would tell young wolves who felt invisible that sometimes the most important choice you make is the one nobody's watching. That real strength isn't about dominance or power games. It's about showing up when it's hard, helping when it costs you, speaking truth when silence is safer. I would tell them about a night in a darkening forest, about choosing right over easy, about an alpha king who valued integrity more than politics. And I would tell them that sometimes missing the ceremony you're supposed to attend leads you directly to the life you're meant to live.